Hi guys, it's Phil here,
And Michael,
and you're watching the IELTS Grind.
remember to like and subscribe. Is that the right thing to say here?
Well, I think so, yeah. So what we're doing today is we're just talking about a couple of questions that we come across quite often with our students. And if you want to join us and have any questions at all, if you're joining us live, then you can, of course, ask a question. If you're watching this on the replay, then you can just listen back and
leave comments with those questions yourself. We'll check them out. We'll get to them.
So one of the questions I see quite a lot, especially in Facebook groups and things like that, is how do I start learning for the IELTS? How do I start studying for the IELTS? So there are many different ways, but I know what I would say.
Okay, what would you say?
So I think it's really important to get a kind of a base level. What I mean by that is you can't really plan your study, what you're going to do, unless you know where you are. And if you know your band score, then you can look at the information that's out there and plan your study accordingly. So the best way to do that is basically to go to a test center, take a mock test, or take one of those Cambridge exams that you can get.
That's definitely the first thing that you should do is find out what your level is. And if you don't have access to those resources, you can probably find a teacher who can give you an approximate level on a different system like the CEFR. It's not an exact equivalent.
No, but I mean, if you're somewhere between a 5.5 to a 6.5, that puts you in about the the B1 level.
Yep.
If you're B2, you're sort of getting to 6.5 to 7.5. Yeah. So if you've taken a test on the European framework recently, then you kind of know where you are.
And most ESL students, most ESL teachers, they...
Ooh, bit of thunder.
Yeah. Oh no, ESL teachers.
It's going to rain here in Taipei.
So most ESL teachers are actually more familiar with the European framework than the IELTS exam, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Like they'd be able to tell you what to do. But we have a couple viewers. Hi, welcome.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, feel free to ask us in the chat, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So the next thing that we were going to start talking about is common problems that our students have.
I think we've got to go back because just knowing your level is not enough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the starting point.
Yeah, that's the starting point. So once you know what your level is, I think you've got to go and use both IELTS style resources. So, for your listening, do listen to IELTS listening practices. But it's also just doing general things like we like to pick a TV show, right?
Yeah.
So you've got some great tips when it comes to using TV shows to improve all manner of things.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And just to reiterate, just to say it again, the IELTS exam, a lot of people don't realize that it's testing two things. It's testing your ability to take the IELTS exam, and then it's also testing your general English ability, which is what it was built to do originally, right? And you've got to improve both of them. And so, like Phil was saying, one of the best ways to improve your general listening comprehension is by watching TV shows and also reading for fun, which we'll get to in a bit. But when you're trying to use TV shows to learn a language, you've got to be careful, because if you're just watching a TV show with subtitles in your native language, it's not going to help you too much. I actually have a great story about this. When I was in high school and college, I loved anime. Anime is Japanese cartoons. And I would watch a lot of anime. I had a lot of free time. So I would watch sometimes 8 hours of anime a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's excessive.
I had a lot of free time. I loved it, right? And the thing was, I was a fancy anime watcher. I only watched with Japanese audio and English subtitles. Right? And after probably 8 years of watching anime excessively, like you said, how many Japanese words do you think I learned?
I don't know. Ich, me, san.
I don't even know those. I learned probably 5 to 8 Japanese words, because I wasn't learning Japanese. It was just sounds to me. Like they were showing the emotions, but the whole time I was thinking English.
Yeah.
So it's really important that you are not only using your native language subtitles when you're using TV shows to learn.
Yeah.
So what we have a 6-step method.
Yeah.
We actually did a whole video on it if you want to check it out somewhere else. But basically, step 1 is if you're below 6, you should be watching with subtitles in your native language first.
Yeah.
And then you want to watch the same episode again with English subtitles.
This is why it's good to pick a 20-minute episode. Something, if you've ever watched with friends, they're normally like 20-minute episodes. But there are other things out there.
Big Bang Theory, How I Met Your Mother, most sitcoms are like that.
Because then you can watch them again and again. If you're watching a 3-hour movie, it's not going to really be that great.
Yes.
So after we've listened to it with our native subtitles, if we're below our band score 6, then with the English subtitles.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the point of doing steps 1 and 2 is to raise your general English ability. As you're listening to it again with English subtitles, you'll start to pick up and start using English to understand the story. And you've already understood the story because you watched it before.
Yeah.
Next is step 3, which is step 3 and 4 is to help you listen for those little words that you usually miss.
Especially in the listening.
Yeah, especially in the listening. And we call these unstressed words. These are like in, of, the, you forget to say them or you miss them all the time. So with this, you need to choose a sentence that you think is useful or fun or funny, or you think you'd like to learn how to say. Just one sentence. And you need to turn off subtitles and then listen to it again and try to write down what you hear. After you do that, you turn subtitles back on and then you check in the second color. And I bet you there are mistakes.
Yeah.
And most of your mistakes are probably unstressed words. So as you keep doing this every day, it will become easier and easier to improve.
Yeah, because this is important not only for the listening, but it's when you're speaking as well. Because if you don't hear those words when you're listening to others speak, you're not going to use them when you're speaking, and even when you're writing.
Yeah, it's so true. Like so many grammar mistakes that people make in speaking are actually pronunciation mistakes.
Yeah.
Like the students don't hear the sound, and so they're saying what they hear. It just happens to be wrong.
Yeah. And so this will help you with your listening, help you with your grammar, so your writing, your speaking as well. But it's also going to help you with your accent, which is kind of the next thing we're going to do.
Yep. So after you've listened and wrote and transcribed or wrote down what you heard, and then you fixed it, step 5 and 6. Step 5 is really kind of tricky to explain if you've never studied English before, like with a teacher who could explain pronunciation. But you need to mark the stress. So English has the rhythm that it does because English is a stress-timed language. And what that means is some syllables are stressed. These are usually content words, and other words are unstressed. Again, this is why you miss all those things that you heard before. And you need to listen and mark the stress. Usually, most of the words that you got correct were the stressed words. And the little words that you missed were the unstressed words.
Because they're easier to hear because
they're louder and longer. Yeah.
I know it sounds perhaps a little bit complex. It's a little bit, do I really have to do that? But if you try it, you're honestly going to see a difference very, very quickly in your pronunciation and overall understanding.
Pronunciation is, I have found personally amongst my students, when they're doing this regularly, pronunciation is like the fastest thing to improve.
Yeah. But it seems like the most difficult thing. It's like, how can I get an accent very close to a native? That must be impossible, but it's not.
Yeah, you do this. You first, step 5, mark the stress. And then step 6 is when you listen and repeat. Yeah.
So that's a really good way to use that kind of material to help you. And we mentioned reading for fun. Mm-hmm. So if you want to improve things like vocabulary and also your knowledge of grammar, you shouldn't just be focusing on IELTS kind of level text. You do need to read them because that's what you're going to see in an exam. But you should also just be immersing yourself in the English language, just basically seeing it every day, not all day perhaps, but every day. And one thing we kind of ask our students to do is just to read for fun for 20 minutes.
Every day.
Yeah. So
that last bit is important. Yeah.
Because the more often you do it, the better it is, right? So, for example, I mean, what are you into right now? What are you reading about?
I'm reading I'm reading mystery novels like Agatha Christie.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something. It's nothing connected to the IELTS, right?
Yeah.
But by reading that, you're going to pick up loads of really good vocabulary, collocations in particular. They're great. And you're going to really see a lot of grammar structures. And it's nothing to do with the IELTS.
Yeah.
And because it's fun, you're more likely to do it. So
it's true. It's true.
It's one of the other things. So apart from watching TV, reading for fun, any other tips you'd give for how to prepare?
All right. So if you have the exam coming up, like ideally you start preparing 6 months, 4 months in advance so that you have time to improve, because cramming doesn't really work that much. But if you are in crunch time, like you have the exam coming in the next month, I do recommend that for your fun reading, you should still do your fun reading. You shouldn't not do it. You should do your fun reading 20 minutes every day, except you should start focusing on articles that are similar to what you'll see on the IELTS exam. So this will be like Time Magazine, National Geographic, BBC. If you read articles in the technology, the science, or the humanities sections, those will help bolster your vocabulary in the fields that the IELTS exam will have. All right.
So just be familiar kind of topics in the sense of what IELTS normally.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just getting into the habit of actually doing that. So
yes.
The other thing that we would talk about is there are lots of free resources out there, but I do find that using a good book, especially from Cambridge University Press,
because they made the test, right?
Yeah. If you can get your hands on something like, I quite liked Complete IELTS.
Oh, that's probably my favorite in-class textbook to use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of good because it does take you through many of the different topics that you will use, and it will also give you sort of examples of the questions you'll see in listening.
It really
reading,
does teach you how to do the stuff.
Yeah. But it's not the only one, right? There's another one you suggest, right?
Well, Barron's is nice for self-study. Like if you're studying on your own, Barron's is just a giant textbook of IELTS.
How do you spell Barron's?
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for showing them my terrible. I don't know if it's 1 R or 2 R's.
Is Barron with an A or?
Yeah, it's BARRON.
It's either 1 R or 2 R's, but Barron like that.
Yeah,
not Barron.
But it's a pretty popular textbook. I have a feeling our 2 wonderful viewers, hey guys, probably have heard the name before. Yeah.
So it's not that you have to get an IELTS book, but it will help you.
It helps structure things.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were going to talk about another thing. Do you remember the other question that we had?
Yeah, it was common mistakes students make.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you want to start off with?
Sure. Thanks, Phil.
You mentioned one before, didn't you, about people when it comes to sort of the structure in writing? Yeah.
So a really common mistake that a lot of students make is that they confuse task 1 and task 2, right? Like they both have 4 paragraphs, nice, but task 1 should go intro, overview, body 1, body 2, no I, no why, no conclusion.
Yeah.
Task 2 is intro, body 1, body 2, conclusion, and inside your intro of task 2, you have a special sentence called a thesis. And so many times I see students, they put an overview in task 2, or they put a thesis in task 1, or they say why the graph is showing this information. Don't do that in task 1. Yeah.
So the best way to sort of overcome this is, well, firstly, we've got plenty of videos that we've been talking about this in, but get your hands on some model answers. There are plenty of model answers that are supplied by both Cambridge, but also there's loads of resources out there.
Yeah.
And we also have the same thing. And just look at how is a high-level task 1 written, how is a high-level task 2 written, and just steal that structure. Just do the same thing, but just put it into your own words.
Yeah, that's an important bit.
Yeah.
You can't memorize things for the IELTS exam. It will lower your score. If the examiner thinks that one of your answers is memorized, those don't count towards your word count, and that can really hurt you.
This is why, to a certain extent, finding out about these current exam questions, leaked questions, as they call it, it's not going to help you, because the more you learn beforehand, the more danger you're likely to have. I should say.
I've heard some friends of mine talk about friends of theirs,
yeah,
where like the thing that most people don't realize is when they memorize an answer for the IELTS exam, you're not the only person.
Yeah.
And so the story I heard was that like this guy was like, why have so many people lost their grandparent when they were taking their final exam? It's like an epidemic. Like so many people like, oh, they had final exams and their parents didn't tell them that their grandparents passed away. Like, happened 10 times in a row.
So perhaps if you're the first person that says that story, the examiner might be like, oh, what a shame. The second person, what a coincidence. The third person, wait a second. And the fourth person, they're like, okay, not counting that.
Memorize answer.
Yeah, I never thought about that. It's probably true.
Yeah.
Right?
And another thing that I heard is a problem is that like people try to memorize an answer, but because they're low level, they didn't learn it with correct grammar.
Yeah.
So like, what's something that you don't want to share? And then like a common thing is like, oh, my boyfriend, right? Like if you have good English, oh, that's a witty, funny answer. But if you've got bad grammar, it sounds weird.
I don't want to share my boyfriend. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
It would be confusing.
Yeah.
Okay. So some of the other sort of mistakes that people make with listening, for example, I think it's they don't know that they have to listen and write answers at the same time, especially for higher. So I would say going on to the academic part of the listening, so part 3 and part 4, and it's sort of not really focusing on what you're doing, and you only get to listen to it once, and if you lose focus, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it.
And a way to get around that is by putting a check. Everything on the exam paper for the listening exam will be said, so you will hear that. So if you are following along and you're just putting a check next to every word that you hear, it's hard to get lost because you're like, I heard this, I heard this, I heard this, it's time for this. But the exam is a long test, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's 30 minutes of straight listening. And then luckily that's the first thing. But after that, it's an hour of reading. Like the test is long. It's an endurance test.
Yeah, that's what you say, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's another mistake, which is not practicing that. Like for example, the test normally happens fairly early in the morning. So
yeah.
So you should, if you're not
you're a night owl.
Yeah, if you're not a morning lark, I would say a month before you're going to take your test, get in that routine of waking up early so your brain is working, and also waking up early and doing the entire test. So maybe not the speaking, because you don't need to do that on the same day if you don't want to. Probably not a good idea. But doing the 3 other papers starting at 8 o'clock in the morning.
I hadn't thought about that. I always tell my students when you practice, do all 3 at the same time to build up that endurance.
Yeah.
But yeah, practicing at the same time you'll have the test. That's smart.
Yeah, I think I saw that someone gave me that as a tip. And I thought, yeah, it makes sense.
No, Phil, it all came from you. It was all your tip.
If I could remember the person's name who said that, it was actually a a person that had recently passed. I thought that's a very good tip, because I mean, if you're not a morning person, I'm not particularly a morning person.
He's really grumpy.
You've got to get yourself into that routine. Okay, so we had a couple more talking points. What else were we going to cover today?
Do you need a teacher?
Oh, that was, Well, we're kind of biased.
Yes, you definitely need a teacher.
Us. You need us. I think there is one maybe group of students that probably could get a very good score in the IELTS without having a teacher. And those are the very motivated ones.
Yeah.
So the problem is we don't know many of them. So you can definitely, if you have the resources and you practice every day and you're kind of giving yourself little goals to aim for, you're taking tests to show your improvement, you can definitely improve this, your level of English. But if you're not someone that is that motivated, you can easily get distracted. Having a course or something like that will really help you. Yeah.
And then I think, didn't you told me earlier on that like there's two things that you kind of need a teacher for, right?
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, when it comes to writing, there's no substitute for having a native or someone with a very good knowledge of English, I should say, I can't even speak, to correct your writing. And it's not just correcting what's wrong, it's also making suggestions for structure, for developing ideas to make everything kind of work a little bit better. A teacher's really good for that.
Yeah.
And also speaking, because I know from my own experience learning a language, it's not always that easy to spot your own mistakes. But when someone points them out for you and gives you a way to improve that, you can improve more quickly. And I think that's our main point.
Yeah.
You can do it on your own, but if you were to work with somebody, whether it's in a class or virtually or just a correction service, you're going to improve much more quickly.
Yes, it's more efficient, right? One thing that you need to realize that teachers have is experience and knowledge about language acquisition.
Yeah.
Like they know, they've been teaching for oftentimes many years, and so they know techniques about what works and they know what doesn't work. I personally hate it when I have students who come in and are like, oh, you got to do it this way. I'm like, no, like vocab lists, right? Like they don't work,
no.
But people want to use them because that's what they started with. Yeah. But there's research that shows that is not a good way to learn vocabulary. And yeah.
So basically, in summary, if you do have a teacher, do listen to them.
Yes, please.
They are, the vast majority are there actually trying to help you. They know what they're talking about. But you can certainly do this on your own. There's nothing to stop you. But
speaking of which, so we just talked about how nice it is to have a native speaker helping you with your pronunciation, your vocabulary, your grammar, your fluency. But there's two things that you can do if you are on your own to improve some of these things.
Yeah, okay, that's
first of all, the best way to improve your fluency is just to get into the habit of using English.
Yeah.
And you guys are so lucky that you're learning English because there are so many resources out there for you. A really good one is meetup.com. That's MEETUP.com. There's also an app if you want to download it for Android or iOS. But Meetup is great because it's if you search in English on Meetup, most places have foreigners who speak English.
Yeah.
And so if you search in English, you'll see groups that are made by English speakers who want to do activities where they're living or where they're staying. And so if you use Meetup, you're able to go and be in these environments and use English natively. Now, please be careful. Please don't go there and be like, hey, can you fix my grammar? No one's going to want to be your friend.
No. But it's just using the language.
Exactly. You're putting yourself in a situation where you need to use it to communicate.
That's how I learned French.
Right? How, like...
So I didn't use Meetup. There was another organization website called Couchsurfing. So it's primarily to sleep on couches, but I never did that. I just went to the events, and it was in France, and so I just tried to speak French to the locals, and it worked.
You also had the bonus of living there.
Yeah. But for me, I was in the foreign country doing that, but what we're saying is there's lots of natives and other people that speak English very well who will go to your country. They're already there. You've just got to find them.
And make friends with them. Please don't become an English pirate. Don't be friends with them just to learn Chinese or learn English. Do it to make a friend.
An English pirate.
It's true. It's the phrase. That's what they're called.
Okay.
Like, trust me, like you'll see them. And be careful. Like, people who live abroad, they know this, right? Like, if they've been here for any shape of time, you see the signs where, like, someone's always coming up and trying to be near you and, like, always trying to say things to you, even if it's not connected to the conversation at the time.
Oh.
Like, don't be that person.
I don't have any friends like that. I must not be good enough. Okay. So what else were we going to talk about?
There was a second thing which you can do to improve your vocabulary and grammar by yourself. So a lot of students, like, there's very few true beginners who are taking IELTS. By the way, a true beginner is someone who has zero English and is starting to learn English. Most people are false beginners, or they've been learning for a bit. And the thing that you can do to improve your vocabulary and grammar is people don't like to hear this, you can record yourself and listen to yourself, and I bet you will hear mistakes that you make. What I was trying to say before was a lot of you guys already have a lot of grammar knowledge and a lot of vocabulary knowledge, but you're not thinking about it when you're speaking.
It's difficult, right?
Exactly, right? But the thing is, you are making mistakes that you know how to fix. So you are also making mistakes you don't know how to fix. That's why you get teachers, right? But if you record yourself answering part 1 speaking questions or part 2 speaking questions or part 3 speaking questions, you record yourself and then you listen to your recording, just write down your mistakes, okay? And then after you write down your mistakes, you don't need to write down everything, don't worry. You just write down your mistakes and then you record yourself again, but the second time you're focusing on fluency and vocabulary. If you do this, again, over time, your grammar and vocab will get better because you'll start hearing your mistakes. Yeah. Right now, you probably don't hear them. You're just talking and you're talking. And then when the teacher writes your mistake on the board, you're like, I can fix that. Present perfect. Yes. I can fix that. Wrong collocation, right?
And it takes practice because you'll slowly get to a level where all of that grammar knowledge and vocabulary knowledge that you already have, you'll just get to a level where you will just use it and you won't make those mistakes anymore.
Yes, exactly. That's what we're trying to get to, where you're more naturally using it. Yeah.
And another tip is for your writing. Now, I'm not a scientist, but there is this big news. I'm not a scientist, but there is this thing where if you're reading back, if you're proofreading your writing, which you should be doing anyway, if you're don't hurt yourself.
I was so surprised. This tip is so amazing.
If you're proofreading and you read what you've written aloud or under your breath, there's a big difference between reading it in your head and reading it aloud because your brain does something. You will start to spot the mistakes that you've made, and in particular, you will spot the words that you may have left out. And this is something even we do, right?
It's true. It's true.
Your dad told
you. When I was a kid, when I was in elementary school and high school, I would be like, Dad, can you check this? And he'd be like, read it out loud. I'd be like, fine. And then I read it out loud and there's a mistake here. He was lazy.
Yeah. he was
smart. Yeah.
He was giving you
it's good advice.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is what I do with my students if I have private one-on-ones. Yeah. It's harder to do in a group class, right? But if I have privates, that's what I do. If they write me an essay, before, like, maybe I'll tell them the score that they got, but before I give them my help, I make them read it out loud. And we play a little game. So you can do this with your friends. If you have friends or classmates who are also learning IELTS, you guys can do this too. Have one person read their essay, and then have the other guys waiting with their hand like this. And then if the person hears a mistake, hit the table.
So it's snap.
It is like snap. It's grammar snap.
That's a really good tip.
Yeah.
So don't forget, you're watching us live. So if you've got a question, is there anything that you're worried about with IELTS? Anything you want to ask us? You've got two IELTS teachers right here. So don't forget, type a question. Yeah. And
yeah. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties.
He's not very good at typing, apparently. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So and let's do like one more tip, common mistake that we see our students do.
Well, the one thing I see is we know that when it comes to writing and speaking, we need to use sort of more advanced vocabulary, for example. And I had a student recently, and she's a big fan of sort of the classics, classical literature, right?
Okay.
This is what she was studying, and so she was always trying to use very complex sort of vocabulary, but she was using it in the wrong way. And I think we were talking about, I can't remember exactly, but it was something to do with writing. And she kept using the wrong word. She kept using like a script. And I was like, no, it's not script. It's just like a text. So she was trying to use a very advanced word, but it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So sometimes using a simpler word is the right course because it's the right word.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a balance between using more advanced grammar and vocabulary, particularly vocabulary. But you really need to know how to use it. That's basically the thing.
Yeah. We got a comment. Hi, Alberto. Welcome.
Yeah.
Hi.
This is a really good tip. So
yeah, for sure.
It's also something I've said to students before is
this is what you say to do.
One way to kind of check your writing on it at home is to do this thing. Put it into Google and see what comes back. If you are trying to practice your collocations, so words that naturally go together, you put them into Google, and if it comes back with a "do you mean?" it probably means that's not something that we use.
Yeah, that's super smart. And just for people who may be watching this after the live stream is over, we're going to say what Alberto suggested. He said, for grammar, I usually Google the expression between quotation marks to see if natives actually use it. That's what I do every time I'm not sure about an expression.
Yeah.
By the way, fantastic grammar right there.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a feeling I may know Alberto. I might have spoken to Alberto somewhere before. Yeah. Okay. So we were going to talk about one last thing, I think. Do you remember?
Was it about us, who we are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been producing videos for a while, but this is our first live stream.
Right? Welcome if you're here.
Yeah.
Hi.
So, it's something that we want to do more often. Today we're sort of testing out the technology and to see what we can do and how it turns out. But yeah, so this is Mike. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
I'm Mike. Do we use last names here, or are they secret?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm Mike, Mystery Mike. And I've been teaching English for a long time now. I went into teaching English right after college. I went off to China for 2 years. I lived in Guangxi, Guilin, which is a very famous, beautiful city in China, and it's famous for the really weird mountains that are there. And then I moved after teaching at a university in China. I moved to Taiwan, which is where I am now, in Taipei. And in between there, I got my CELTA, which was my teaching certification. It kicked my butt. It was super hard, but totally worth it. I became a much better teacher. And did
you do that it's the 1 month sort of?
Yeah, I did the 1 month intensive. It was killer. Yeah. Like,
good fun though.
It was the most academically rigorous thing I'd ever been through, which is crazy because I've been to college, right? You'd think that college would be more intense than a training certificate, but yeah.
Similar story. So I've traveled quite a bit. I left the UK. I'm from the UK. So I left the UK about 12 years ago. I went for a 2-week holiday. I never went back. So I've lived.
Are your parents worried?
I'm sure he would be coming back soon. So I've lived all over. I lived in different places in Europe, France for about 6 years in total, went to Belgium, Italy as well. And then I moved to Taiwan probably about 3 years ago now.
Yeah, so short. I've been here for 5 years now.
Yeah.
Got my permanent residency.
Yeah. And I did my CELTA, but that was about 10 years ago now.
Did you do that before you left?
Yeah, before I left France for the first time.
It's crazy. When I was in China, I had no teaching credentials at all, like nothing, not for teaching ESL, not for teaching anything. But I got the job there at the university. And it was really funny how I met my girlfriend, Robin. We're using her computer right now. Thanks, Robin. And I was her boss, which is ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
Because
she's much more educated.
Yeah, she was there doing a 6-month internship as the final part of her master's degree in teaching English as a second language. And because I was there for 2 years, I was the vice deputy director of foreign staff.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah.
Very fancy.
Very fancy.
Yeah.
But it was actually, I had access to all of her ESL books. And that's where I fell in love with actually teaching English. Like, English teaching was always a fun thing before. But once I started reading those books about how to actually teach English, I realized that language acquisition is more of a science. Definitely. Like, you can test to see if someone's learned something. There's specific methods that you can follow to help students get to those goals, and you set them. It's great.
That's the great thing about learning English. Well, any language, I suppose, but English in particular, because there's been so much research that's been put into it. So wherever you're from, whatever language that you speak, you can just check, learning English for Chinese speakers, learning English for Spanish speakers, whatever it is. And you'll get a lot of tips on what you can do,
what you need,
and how you can be more effective in your learning.
Yeah.
So obviously we have this channel, the IELTS Grind. So we've been teaching IELTS for a number of years. And as we said, this is our first live stream, but it won't be the last.
Yeah.
And we'll try and improve everything as we go along.
And of course, we want more feedback from you guys. If you guys are channel regulars, let us know what you want, and we will give it to you. And I think we should give them a little bit of a taste of what's to come.
Yeah.
We're thinking for our next live stream that we actually give you some prompts about 24 hours before the live stream.
Yeah.
And then during the live stream, we can give feedback to essays that you guys have written.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That'll be useful.
I hope you guys find that super useful. Just let us know if you like that idea, and we'll give you that stuff. And we're hoping to do this regularly on Friday nights.
We haven't picked a day, but we'll do that as often as we can.
Yeah.
But don't worry, because later on today, as we're doing this, there is a video coming out which is going to be super. It's all about part 4, and this guy is telling you how to do better in part 4 of the listening. Okay, guys, so I think we're going to end it there.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again very soon live.
Peace, guys.
Bye-bye.